right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Building Your World, where we discuss all topics in the commercial real estate development and investment industry. I'm Nicholas Long. I'm joined again by Kevin Han, and I wanted to remind our viewers that you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please also follow on X for updates. We are fortunate to be joined by a guest today, Mr. Drew Turner, special guest. We've been trying to get him on for a while, haven't been able to connect, but I'll let Kevin go ahead and introduce him. Kevin.
Yeah, we're really excited about the conversation we're going to have today. We welcome a friend of mine, Drew Turner, founder and principal of Ashley Cooper Properties in Charleston, South Carolina, which specializes in ground-up infill development within the Charleston MSA. With a background of cutting his teeth at firms like JLL, Holder Construction, and Craig Davis Properties, he's certainly someone with an impressive history and an entrepreneur we're excited to learn more about. We'll dive into his successes and maybe more importantly, some of his failures so we can all educate ourselves on a few of the right and wrong ways to manage projects. So let's just dive right into it. Drew, it's good to see you, my man.
Love it. Always a pleasure to get together with you, Kevin. Always a good time. And Nick, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited for the conversation. Thanks for allowing me to come here and chat with you guys.
Yeah, man, it's good. I've heard a lot about you, so definitely looking forward to learning a little bit about what you're doing. I guess we can kind of just jump right into it. So, are you from this area originally? It seems that you mostly work in Charleston. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm one of the rare natives you'll run into these days. So that's always kind of the first comment is like, "Oh,
He doesn't like
Yeah,
people
you're
like,
actually.
yeah."
like
It's
me.
always like, "Oh, that's interesting." Yeah, you don't really see any of those these days. But yeah, I'm from here originally, born and raised. Grew up in the North Charleston, Somerville area, and then went to Clemson, studied construction, traveled around the country, did the construction gypsy thing for 10 years, lived in a number of different places. The fun fact I always like to say is I filed for 4 state tax returns one year. So it was it was a lot of travel, but we were doing some really cool projects, some high profile clients. I mean, these were, 100, $200 million large scale commercial construction projects for firms like Apple, Oracle, Research in Motion, who owns BlackBerry, just to kind of date myself a little bit. That was my first project out of school.
Dang,
So
that's awesome.
That's hysterical, man. I haven't heard BlackBerry in a minute.
nobody has.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, it was great. Learned a ton, had a great experience, and that's a really cool thing for a young single guy to do. And around the time I was kind of entering the next chapter in my life and settling down a little bit, I really started to fall in love with the kind of development side of the business. Started to educate myself there. Had the opportunity to get back to Charleston, which kind of worked out perfect personally as well as professionally. It gave me a chance to kind of reestablish myself here and my network here in Charleston. Prior to that, working for a national GC, all my contacts were, national vendors, national contractors. And so getting back to Charleston, working for JLL, really got, it was a great chance and an opportunity to come back and, like I said, kind of grow that network here in Charleston. So
yeah. So just so to make sure I'm following that. By the way, I grew up in Somerville as well and went to Clemson. So go Tigers.
dude,
Cool to
let's
hear
go.
that.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah. So just so you studied CSM,
Correct.
construction size management, and then you went straight into working for a national GC, right? So,
Correct.
and what group was that again?
Holder construction.
Gotcha. Holder
Yeah.
construction.
So,
How long?
yeah,
How long were you there?
almost 10 years.
10 years. Nice. And then your move back here is when you joined JLL, based out of Charleston. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha.
JLL, international brokerage firm,
Yep.
but they have a vertical they call project and development services, and it's former contractors, architects, engineers who are now operating in an advisory role as a consultant or a project manager for clients in various capacities.
Cool. Yeah, at that time, were you focused on a particular asset class? I know, jumping forward a little bit, you're involved in a good bit of multi now. Is that right?
That's what I was focused on working, for a kind of regional, more institutional level developer. With JLL, the way the business was run, it was more geographically focused. So we were additional bandwidth or additional expertise for clients that were here in Charleston. So they could
Okay.
be like end user tech companies who were moving offices and had this large, capital program where software is their business and they don't understand the, construction and development side of that effort, right? And relocating, space planning, design, and we had the resources and the references here, so we ran a process and we would onboard designers, contractors. We would manage those folks from sort of the beginning to the end of, and again, in this example, moving to a new 10, 15,000 square foot office in a
Yeah.
Gen 1 building where you've got, multi-million dollar kind of build out project. And that was kind of on the smaller scale. We did BlackBerry, their new headquarters. We acted as the kind of tenant rep in that case. Holder Properties did the development, and Blackbaud was kind of the client there. And we just, again, same thing, kind of helped them through that process and represented them as the developer delivered the building and the space. It was to their spec, and we managed cost and risk and schedule and all that good stuff.
Yeah, cool office too. I've been in there, and
It's
it's
very
pretty cool.
sweet. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very sweet.
Where is it?
So
Yeah.
Daniel Allen.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, well, that's cool. So, a ton of experience. What I guess, to back up a little more, what got you interested in construction and real estate to begin with? Obviously, you went to school for it, but
I
what
did.
drove you to pursue that industry?
It probably goes back to being a kid and playing with Legos and Lincoln Logs and, just following a set of instructions and building things and having something like tangible at the end that you can say like, oh, wow, that was cool. I put all that time and energy into it, and now like I have this thing. And so,
Actually, his wife made him put together a bunch of IKEA furniture, and he's the only person who ever enjoys reading the set of instructions.
Yeah.
yeah, a hundred
That's what it
percent.
is.
I am the lunatic that's like, oh, you have 8,000 pieces in this like small note card of instructions. Like, yeah, let's go figure it out.
He's the
Yeah.
guy. He's the guy that separates all the tools in front of you before you start, which is what you're supposed to do, but nobody
Yeah.
does. He's that guy.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So you're a sucker for building plans, I assume.
100%. I love it. I can, you get into those weeds and all the details and, yeah, nerd out, as they say, over those kind of things.
Oh man, dude, I sometimes struggle to read building plans. But anyway,
Yeah, not my forte.
that's awesome. So okay, cool. So then got you in, and then spent 10 years in the GC world, transitioned into more of a development role with JLL.
Yep.
Um, awesome. And then so I assume that your next jump, right, was starting your own group, Ashley Cooper
There was
Properties.
one
So
more one more piece there. So with JLL again, we were, I was kind of operating as a consultant, more or less. And then, long story short, I reconnected with a former client. So I had actually built a project for Craig Davis Properties based out of Raleigh. We did a project for them out in Colorado when I was on the GC side. And so Craig and I reconnected as he was trying to scale a multifamily vertical within his development firm. And so they hired JLL as a project manager for a 300 unit garden style, walk up multifamily development, which was one of about 3 or 4 projects that they were kind of queuing up in the pipeline behind this family office. They had a whatever 150 million dollars in equity they were trying to deploy over the multifamily asset class. And so we were merchant building basically as a partner with them. And so yeah, I ended up, was working for Craig as a consultant, and then ended up hiring on and was basically their director of construction. The evolution was, kind of heading up all construction aspects, from the multifamily to other, kind of mixed use. We had a little industrial project we were doing. So I hired on and went full time with Craig, and it was great. I kind of got to ride shotgun with him and learn, firsthand the whole process, and was invaluable in, kind of my path, and sort of getting that kind of exposure and experience. And then yeah, after a few years, kind of hit that now or never moment. And yeah, that's when we started Ashley Cooper Properties in May of 24. So we just kind of crested about a year out doing the thing. So
There you go,
yeah,
Yeah, man.
man. It
I'm
feels
still don't
sure.
have
great.
anything to show for it yet, but we're still keeping on.
It's
Yeah.
a long sales cycle, long development cycle. So
Oh my
It
goodness,
is.
we're in the slowest business in the world to be an impatient person. That's what
yeah,
I say
it
because I'm an impatient person.
it's
A
not
hundred
for the faint.
percent.
It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, you talk to some people in like tech sales, and like, yeah, our sales cycle is 8 months. I'm like, ours is like
I was like, oh,
five,
that's fun.
five. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, so at least you see some sort of reward within a short period of time. Like we do this kind
Right.
of work for 5 years, and we still might have nothing to show for it.
I've
Yep.
been using this. I've been working on the same build to suit lease now for like over a year and a half. So,
That's
um,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, the
So,
first the first deal, so kind of the jumping off point was a small land site that we closed on, kind of at risk, and I've got all the lessons learned and the hindsight vision at this point, but went at a little at risk and closed on this little, little more than a half acre deal in April of 24, and we started going vertical at the end of March of 25, and we are just getting ready to finish construction and are kind of setting up the, back end marketing, getting the project listed, and hopefully going to start seeing some sales here in the next like 45-60 days. So
sweet.
uh
Yeah.
it's
What
So that's
a
that's
it's a long fuse.
yeah, right. That's the first project, right? That
Correct.
that actually okay. So that's cool.
And
Let's dig a
what's the
little
name of
further into
it?
that.
What's the name of it?
Well, Gravely Avenue Townhomes.
Okay.
I have to stop myself from saying Helm. Helm Ave was the address of the property, and once we had it readdressed, we're trying to switch now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a 8 townhome development,
Sweet. And what part of town is that in?
North Charleston.
Okay. Nice.
Yep,
So
right outside of Park Circle, in a up and coming area.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Um,
if I Google it, will I find it?
No, that's a good question.
What's your SEO like, Drew?
It's just getting started. That was the call I had before this.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's pretty awesome. I'm sure Craig was sad to see you go, but that's pretty cool that you made jump ship. Obviously, something that Kevin's done here, and Kevin's running down deals doing the same thing. So awesome. So, can you tell us kind of your approach for your first deal? You mentioned that you kind of bought it at risk. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about some of the things you would have changed, or the things you thought you got right? Kind of dive a little bit into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hindsight's always 2020, and this is a never-ending like learning process, right? So as I get into bigger deals that are inherently more risky, you take a different approach, and as it pertains to like land development specifically, we're now getting long due diligence periods, and we're going through entitlement efforts and permitting. Some of them are heavier now, where they require annexations and rezoning, and we're doing all of that before closing and committing too much on the sale. Whereas this first deal, right or wrong, was by right zoned. We knew what we could do with it. We knew a few things we could do with it. We sort of minimized our downside risk, and within like a 30-60 day DD and a 30-day close period, like we were now the owners of this parcel. And and looking back at it, it's like, probably not the smartest thing to do in the world, but like, you got to start somewhere. So,
Yeah, yeah.
For
Everyone's
sure.
like, you're either an idiot or you have balls, one or the other.
right.
Yeah.
I was like, I got a geotech done. Like, we did some site layouts, and this is like good, like 90% chance this works out. So, like, let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh,
Well, good for you. I mean, you made
yeah,
it.
man.
You made it happen, right?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, "Oh, wow!" Yeah, I tell that story, they're like, "Oh, it's interesting."
Yeah, they leave the conversation with you and they go tell their friend about this guy they just met. He's just like did
Yeah,
some
it's like, man,
crazy.
there's guys out there just closing on land, like,
Yeah, yeah,
Let's list some land.
yeah.
Um,
Okay,
awesome,
so
awesome.
lesson
So,
lesson number one.
yeah,
Trust
lesson
me.
number one, try and manage your risk. Get understand. Maybe solidify your strategy and know what sort of upfront time you need in order to go make sure everything works. Make sure your contract reflects that,
Are
and
you
yeah,
lining up like permitting contingencies? So if you don't get it fully entitled and permitted, um, or you only go hard when you're fully entitled and permitted, or how are you structuring your contract? Obviously, there's an ideal way to do it, and then you have to accommodate what sellers want, and you have to meet somewhere in the middle, right? But like ideally, or more realistically, how are you outlining those contracts?
we're doing that a lot more now, and they'll come with earnest money deposits, and they will be contingent on either a full rezone, full annexation, whatever it is, maybe full permitting. And then if we run into issues, we'll throw in another deposit, or we'll release some earnest money. A lot of the sellers that we're working with are, it's heirs property. They've inherited this land. They're just trying to eliminate a tax obligation and kind of cash out. And so, um, we're getting creative with some of those things, because that type of seller also doesn't want to like stick around for a year while you go figure out what you want to do, and if you can do it, and with the potential of bailing out last minute, and then they've got to go through the process again. It's emotional, it's family land, like whatever the case may be. So they want to get through the process as quickly as possible, and we just kind of balance our risk with what they need.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. A lot of those sellers they want multifamily land pricing when it's currently zoned ag. And it's okay, well,
Right.
we'll give it to you, but we got to make sure that we can do that, right? And
they
then
also want to close in 60 days.
and they want to
Yeah,
close in
and
60 days.
I
Yeah.
know a guy who would
Yeah.
do that, but
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So it's just like educating, and you hope that like if they have a broker, their broker has educated them on that as well. I mean, it makes that conversation a whole lot easier when they've heard it from somebody else too, because they don't trust you off the rip. You're a buyer, and you're trying to you're working for the best interest of yourself and your partners. And so if they've heard that from somebody else that represents them, and then they hear it from you as well, they're more inclined to accommodate.
Yep. And a lot of times with those types of deals too, we may not be the first group who's come around. So in some cases they kind of know the deal. We haven't really been able to come to terms with some of those because there's some fatigue and they want bigger, deposit commitments, or they want shorter DD time frames. And at this point, it's not something that we're willing to do. It's not worth the risk. Um, and some of the deals that we're I could say a lot of the deals that we're doing now are kind of direct to seller. They aren't massive tracks that would support a 100 200 unit development or a large commercial or industrial development. Some of the infill stuff that we focus on, I mean, the largest track right now we have under contract is like 4 acres. So these aren't huge parcels in some of the surrounding areas. These are smaller parcels that are more traditional infill type deals.
Right.
Gotcha. Can I ask you about kind of the strategy for the first and then going forward, kind of what you're thinking there? I think so. You mentioned that you've built these townhomes to sell. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what the project ended up needing to be. Our kind of initial thesis was to develop smaller commercial, whether it's flex, warehouse, some small commercial deals, even multi, small apartment, um, and those just don't work right now. It's very hard to get almost anything ground up going, and with this particular parcel, we kind of went through that process and went through that list, and it was a general business zoned parcel. So we looked at can we do a small flex warehouse? Can we do some you know a small multifamily project, a 12 18 unit apartment? And again, like from a rent standpoint and development cost standpoint, we just couldn't get anything to work. And so we kept going through the list, and we could do residential, and we looked at more like kind of build to rent type deal where was horizontal regime, and we could condo these out. But there's some risk with that strategy on the kind of dispo and exit side, and so we just subdivided the parcel up and are building fee simple for sale townhomes.
Oh, cool.
And those
Gotcha.
numbers, I assume you're doing the project, so I assume the numbers work. But
Yeah.
uh, selling them individually and parceling them off, I mean, that's where the underwriting made sense, and then anything else related to leasing just didn't work.
Correct. Yeah, rents just couldn't support the cost.
Yeah,
And I mean, you can barely service the debt.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so, we looked at, all right, well, what if we just sold these and kind of rolled it into the next thing? Because doing a for sale project, there's no asset to manage. There's no reoccurring, cash flow and income. You take your rip, and that's it. And that wasn't really our thesis. But that's what we're doing because that's what works, and then we'll kind of roll it into the next one.
So generally, I'm asking this because I'm naive to the single family space. I don't follow it. I don't have education on it. So, what what do you typically underwrite in terms of the right word is not vacancy, but like from my world, we underwrite a certain amount of vacancy for a certain amount of time. And I guess how long do you underwrite to sell off these townhomes or sell off each parcel?
Right. Yeah, that's how you would do it. And you can expect, I think, market, you could expect, 2 to 3 sales per month. So, I think our full model accounted for about 3 months to get through, 3 to 4 months to get through, all the sales on this one. Hopefully we can do it sooner and we'll price it accordingly. We originally a year and what will be a year and a half ago, we underwrote these townhomes to sell for in the, mid threes. And even with the softening of the market and what you're seeing with inventory now, we still think that we'll sell these for, around the 425 range.
Nice.
Great, man.
Dang.
Yeah,
So it
I
worked
think
out.
Nick would buy it for 550.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'm
Happy
not
to,
too far away.
yeah, happy to
uh,
give you a tour and
yeah.
see if we can work something out.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Awesome.
Yep.
Um, so okay, so you kind of um just to get this straight, you kind of attacked the land first, and obviously you I assume that you went in with a plan, you kind of marked out what you could do, came up with what you could do, got a successful deal done. Well, you're in the stage of selling those now, or getting close to being able to market those and sell those. What do you think? You said you're under contract for maybe a few other properties. Do you have any upcoming projects that you can share with us, or anything that you're hopeful about, and maybe talk through the strategy going forward on some of those?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think this is a ever evolving practice based on, experience, market conditions, whatever. Um, with the that smaller deal, right? My partner holds a GC license. We're kind of self-developing it, um, and we can control that process, right? Well, then the next deal we got was 18 units. Then it was a 12 unit, and then we looked at, maybe a 40 unit, and which I think that was actually going to be single family, detached instead of an attached product where we are able to get that kind of density. Then we started to evaluate, like, well, that's kind of a lot of inventory. It's dude, we're gonna be building a lot of units, and we're not really a production home builder. And up to this point, it was, we were doing all this because we could build it. We could sell it. It was small enough to where we didn't think that there were going to be, absorption issues. But then with larger deals, you have to really start to think about that. And the growing concern was like, well, if we go, deliver, you can't really phase 18 units. I mean, we're working in this space where it's, sub 40, 50 units, where anything north of that starts to, become more traditional production builder, more institutional level, up to that point. There's not a huge kind of outside market for it. And again, we weren't really set up to go through that whole process, and it just comes more risk on the hard costs, the loan guarantees. And so, started thinking through all that, and at the same time, kind of learning and understanding more about the residential, you know land development and home building market, of which I
Mm.
candidly had zero experience with up to actually doing
Yeah.
it. And met a couple really good, production builder partners, and now we're looking at more of a traditional land development strategy where we'll go through, tying up the land, we'll go through the entitlement, we'll go through the, design and site planning, full engineering, permitting, and we'll look at either selling paper lots to more production home builders,
So
or
real quick, paper lot,
yeah,
educate me. Does that imply that you've entitled it and the guy that comes in to acquire is just going to go vertical? And what does paper lot mean?
paper is fully entitled, permitted, LDP, like you're ready to put a shovel in the ground that day. then that would qualify as kind of a paper lot, and then someone could come in and start the site development and go vertical. But what we kind of learned is that a lot of these guys don't want to even take they definitely don't want to take the entitlement risk. They don't want to and then they don't want the land on the balance sheet. I mean, a lot of these guys are publicly traded, so they don't want the land on the balance sheet. They will pay for someone to even go through the horizontal development, and they prefer to take a finished lot versus a paper lot. And so that's what we've dialed into, because we have the experience on the construction side. I mean, that's kind of how this whole thing started, was being able to really understand what kind of goes on behind the curtain on the construction side of the development process. And so, we'll take it through, again, the full entitlement permitting, and then horizontal development. We'll go do the site development, get through closeouts, get you know, all our engineering system certs, and then hand over the keys, and those guys are ready with pads and infrastructure and roads, and they do what they do best. They start bringing in the bricks and sticks, and they can get a unit done in 5-6 months and start their sales process immediately. Now that I've absorbed we've absorbed the year and a half process up to that point, there's a lot less, construction risk, material market risk, labor risk, so it's kind of makes way more sense for those guys. And, we're able to, you know, make a good deal, make a good profit on a deal by going through that.
At the end of the day, it sounds like they want to be the vertical developer as long as you just pave the way for them.
They don't want to be a developer. They want to be a
Yeah,
builder. And
builder.
so
Gotcha.
they'll let someone else, and prefer to let someone else go through. So I mean, these guys all do it, right? They still all do it, but if they can, they would happily pay for a lot for someone else to have to, for someone else to find the land, go through, all the entitlement, permitting, site development, and then they're ready to just throw a bunch of framers and concrete guys onto a job site and start going vertical.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's kind of what it's turned into, accidentally. We've got three of those going right now. So after this one that we're going to finish going vertical on, here in the next month or so, at this point, we don't really have an intention of going vertical on any of the others.
Okay. Interesting.
Isn't it funny how
And
that works though? A lot of just accidental
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
situations, and it's just all
And we've got
depends
some
on.
small, other deals. We'll find something that you can only subdivide into two lots, or it's just a, single lot, and you got to pay the bills. So we're doing some spec homes on some of those, more scatter type lots. But as far as the larger scale, developments, yeah, that's what we're doing.
cool.
Very cool, man.
And also, by the way, on the pod, if there's something you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But I was curious. Are you outsourcing equity capital, or is it mostly just you guys investing in house?
It's mostly us. We are sourcing some equity, but it's either through a partner who's participating in some capacity, or friends and family.
Okay, so you're not really looking at timelines that you have to deliver returns by or anything like that.
No, most of what yeah, we're raising is more partner level equity, and those returns are typically deferred, and that's kind of how we make some of these smaller deals work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure there's pros and cons to that situation, but it's nice to not have to have a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, it is. the first deal I did, it was self capitalized, and right, wrong, and different, wanted to prove concept before going out and raising any money. And I mean, that was like lesson number one is you need pre-development money, you need a balance sheet. You can't
Yeah.
sink all
Well,
your
and
working capital into these deals.
when you're using all your own capital as the equity, well, now you don't have any cash on hand to show the bank what your liquidity is.
Yeah,
I mean, you gotta,
right.
and we're learning this as we go along too. Like we need to maintain our liquidity so that we can go get more financing and do more deals. But we also have to contribute some capital to deals because equity wants to know that we have skin in the game, and we do have personal guarantees too. So like we already have skin in the game, right? So it just I get what you're going
Right.
through because we're learning that as we go as well, and because eventually I want to be investing a lot more into our deals because I like our deals and I trust our process. And I need to put my money somewhere anyways, right? But if I put X amount of money into one of our deals, that's X amount of money I don't have liquidity to show the bank that just what I'm worth, right? So
Hundred percent.
we're balancing that right now, and we're learning it really on a day by day basis. But we're starting to understand like how this business churns, and then eventually banks start financing off your business, not you personally, right? They start looking at how many deals you've done and what your profit and loss is as a business, and not as much as your personal liquidity, and then things start to compound there. So anyways, it's just funny you bring it up. I
Yeah.
had this conversation recently with somebody else, it's unavoidable when you're starting out with your own firm.
Right. Yep, you do. You gotta do some unconventional things, like putting all your money in deals and closing on parcels at risk. But I mean, look, maybe they teach this in an MRED program somewhere or whatever. I don't know,
You know
but
what? I don't think they do.
yeah, I don't think they do either, to be honest. I think you learn it from just getting out there and just doing it, and you manage your risk the best you can. You use the tools you got, and leverage all of your skills and experience and expertise, and the rest you just kind of figure it out.
You hope you build some relationships with some mentors or other people in your situation that kind of like right now where we're understanding kind of maybe some of the successes and failures you've had and trying to avoid those failures, right? I mean, if I can take some advice from you and then try to avoid it on my end, I'm going to do it. And we've found that just building relationships with people that can just give us advice or just say, hey, this is my experience. It might be different for you for X, Y, and Z reason, but if you can try to avoid this, you're going to save yourself from a lot of hurt. And
Yeah.
and it's really, I mean, that's huge. That's huge, especially
Yeah.
when you're starting out, because there's a lot of money at risk in this business, as you know, right? And you can make a couple mistakes that put you under. And so if you can
Hmm.
avoid some of that stuff, it's valuable.
Absolutely. And that was another whole reason for starting small, and again kind of self-capitalizing and doing some of the things we did in the beginning. We didn't want to get over our skis, right? It's not like I have like all this institutional level experience. Let me go do a 300 unit $50 million ground up you know garden style multi deal. It's like, why don't we close on like half an acre and build like 8 townhomes and
Right.
start there?
Well, here's the thing: if you're self financing, even that, I mean, depending on
Dude.
what your own personal net worth is, right? That alone could do it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
depending on your debt terms and whatever. But so yeah, I hear you.
And then
But
you
to your
guys,
point, Kevin, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Nick.
sorry. Yeah, I was saying, and you guys have a GC in house as well, right? That's what you were saying? Like your partner's a GC?
Correct. Yeah,
So
my
you guys
my partner
self-perform
is a
construction?
GC. Yeah, so we're
Gotcha.
building at cost. I didn't get the act fee. I'm not getting a developer fee, or
Oh, yeah.
he's building at cost. And so literally just the tap has been on for 14 months now.
Yeah.
And So, but and then we'll take our splits on the backside. But again, that was right, wrong, and different. That's just the way we decided to do it on the first one. And look, it's all going to work out. And I was never going to take more risk than I could afford. Kids are still going to go to college. Food still gets put on the table. We had been working up to that point. Like this wasn't an accident. It was all by design. It had been like years and years in the making, with some separate rental properties, some flips, me and my brother did on the side. And all that was to build up, working capital. And so that kind of that fund, was always meant to go start this, and everything else would be okay. And I think that's important too, because it really gives you the mental ability to like go take some of that risk, like go work, go do what, developers do, go do what we do to, um, make some of these deals happen. And worst case scenario, everything would be fine. And in a best case scenario, this actually turns into something. And luckily, I think we're headed more towards that direction. So
Yeah,
It'll
awesome.
it'll turn into something, man, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure it will.
So so if there was a kid out there that kind of wanted to, let's just say, a kid coming out of college or whatever, and he wants to do exactly what you're doing, what advice would you give him? Would you say take the risk early while you don't have anything to lose? Or are you going to tell them, hey, go get experience the same way I did, go work in the industry, go work for a GC, go, work for one of the big brokerage shops, go work in consulting, do something first and then start up? Or how do you see that? Like, looking back, do you think you would have followed the same exact path?
it's a great question. I don't know that I would follow the exact same path, but I would still very highly recommend getting some experience. Go learn from the, best in class developer, contractor, whatever you want to go, whatever you want to pursue. Go learn from some of the best in the business, and then take a shot. And it gives you a chance to do a lot of things, build confidence, the blocking and tackling of the business, right? Go learn that stuff. Go get some credibility. I have conversations with partners, equity partners, lending, capital, other capital partners, and having some amount of experience and resume with projects at scale, definitely helps and makes a difference. So,
Nick, what would you
Yeah, I
say?
tend say that again.
What would you say?
I tend to agree. I think it's easy, when you're younger to be like, see what other people are doing and think that you can do everything yourself immediately and that you've got it made. And you know the algorithm. And but I definitely think it's important to go get a pretty sure amount of experience first. It's different for different people. I mean, some people can observe an industry or a business and understand the way it works immediately, go off on their own and start something successful. Other people really need to find, I guess, more of their niche, see what they're valuable at, and into like in talking to Kevin, one of the big ways that he chose his partner was like, okay, what skills am I lacking, and what does he have that makes up for what I lack. I think that's important as well. For many people, it's just to see where your weaknesses are and figure out how you're going to deal with them. And I think it does take some time to figure out your weaknesses.
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, someone recently told me, and they made a comment about how it's less important to just go work for somebody really successful, and more important to find somebody who is going to guide you, who could also be just as successful. But like, I guess the point they were trying to make is, you can work with somebody who's been an incredible developer their entire life. They're loaded. It's everything you think you want to be, but they're not good at teaching you, and they're not focused. Their focus is not going to be on teaching you how much are you really going to be able to learn? You'll learn some stuff, but you wouldn't learn as much as working for somebody who, like, you know them personally, or you've gotten to know them and you've gotten to know their character, and they have this passion for just teaching people. Right? You're going to learn a lot more from that guy, and you're going to
Right.
absorb a lot more of that information in a 3 or 5 year period than you would working for some crazy big shop that doesn't pay any attention to you.
Yeah,
So
you're saying like find a mentor, right? Like
yeah,
I think about it. I think about it like a kid can start out in multifamily and go work for an insane developer like Graystar, but if they're not getting the right mentorship there, they very well could be better off with a smaller group like with Drew over here.
for sure, yeah, and yes, it could be a mentor, or it could be like if you're interviewing for jobs. Wasn't focusing on this when I started out, and so I'm kind of saying this from hindsight. But like I wish I had focused when I was interviewing with people, right? I wish I had focused on who I was interviewing with and the kind of vibe I got from them when I was interviewing, and not necessarily, how successful are they, but like, can I? Are they going to be there for me? Are they going to guide me through this? Do they have a passion to train young people like me? As long as I work my ass off, right, and I show that I'm trying to learn, like, are they going to kind of reciprocate a little bit? And they don't have to. That's not their job.
Sure.
But that's what I want, and I'm going to absorb a lot more information working for somebody like that. And so, if I was going to tell some young kid out of college trying to find a job, I'd say go maybe work for a big shop because they've got the resources. But as you're interviewing 10 different companies, like, pick out the people that you really enjoy the conversation with the most, and you can get a really good feeling about in regards to like how they're going to guide you through certain situations. I think that's huge because if you're working day in and day out with somebody, but they're really like they're not focused on lifting you up, how far are you really going to go, and how much time are you going to waste? So that's not a tried and true like method, but I agree with it.
For
Yeah, I
sure.
agree, Kevin, 100%. And I've got some examples of both, right? Where, you felt more like a commodity or a resource, and there wasn't a lot of, teaching. But you've got other folks who were like mentors and role models that kind of helped, mold you to how you are. And, you'll reflect on that.
Right.
For sure. Well, cool. I don't know how much time you guys have here, but we can keep going because I am curious about a few other questions. Y'all want to keep
Yeah, we
moving?
got time.
Okay,
Yeah.
man.
All right. So let's talk about this. In some of the notes you sent us, kind of stuff you might want to talk about. Uh, you mentioned some construction and development challenges. What I would say, like, what's the tool belt, or what skill set are you most focused on improving for yourself right now? Do you have one?
Ooh. Oh man. No, it
I want you
it
to lay
is,
out all
and
your
something I
flaws,
should.
Drew. All of your flaws right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Okay.
No.
This just turned into a therapy
No,
session.
it's right. No, it's something that you should be reflecting on and working on. I think that just as a product of this kind of phase and chapter, it's just kind of been like blinders on, like grinding.
Oh yeah,
And I haven't had a ton of real like self reflection time. um, I'm sure there's a ton of things. What I do miss about being in, an environment where you have a bigger team are the opportunities to do that, and some of the structure around like feedback and,
sure,
where you can ask, um, you know, people that you're responsible for, direct reports, or your boss's managers, and you can, do some of that. And it's kind of like a specific, again, like structured, concerted effort. When you're kind of on this island, you lose a lot of that. Um, so something I need to work on, if anything else, like maybe that's the answer, is just figuring that out.
yeah, I got you. All right, that's pretty cool. And for like, in if you were to generalize, um, again, going back to saying there's a kid out of college, what skill set should they be? like it's most important for them to focus on, do you think, when it comes to, let's just start with development? Is it that they should focus on deal making, understanding how to build financial models? What type of thing? Obviously, it takes a little piece of everything, but what do you think? What are some of the more important aspects?
I mean, there is a unlimited list of things that you can do or be educating yourself on, focus on from like a technical skill standpoint, right? All of my experience again was on the construction side, risk management, budget management, schedule management, all of the specifics of kind of delivering and executing on a project. It was, some of the visioning and the strategy behind a deal. What is the perception that you want someone to have when they walk onto your project, whether that's a tenant or whether that's a resident, and how to kind of create that in the beginning and then execute it on the backside, right, with the right property management team, design components, amenities, like whatever it is. That was kind of the next chapter, the next sort of skill set that I learned more on the development side. And then now in this phase, it's understanding, the capital stack and strategies to capitalize a project, partnerships, doing a lot more of the modeling and the financial underwriting, to understand, the metrics around like what makes a sound project, and a sound investment. And so all of the technical things, are extremely important, and there probably is some like order, but if I'm being honest, I think it's all the non-technical stuff that would be the most important, like how to how to find the right people, how to ask the right questions, how to not be scared or nervous to reach out, cold email, cold call someone, ask a mentor things, or identify, like, reach out to a role model, whether you've actually even had a conversation with that person or not. Like, they can still be a role model for you and how you're, kind of,
For
how
sure.
you operate and your strategy and what you like to do. You could just be emulating someone you've never had a conversation with. Well, half the people would be too scared to pick up the phone or send a message to try and like sit down with that person and have a one-on-one conversation that could change the course of their career. And I think some of the softer stuff like that is more important. Go figure that out. Go put yourself in an environment where you can learn those types of things and practice those types of things. And then like the X's and O's, like that stuff comes.
Yeah, I heard a quote the other, not a quote, but some guy was saying, a lot of people complain about how their boss or whoever they work for like doesn't see their value or their vision, and the guy's like, it's not your boss who's supposed to see that in you. Like, you need to learn how to communicate that to him. It is your job to learn the soft skill of either building mentors or just expressing what you're good at or what you know or what you don't know. Like, it's a skill to communicate in that style. And the people who know how to do it and do it effectively, I mean, they're incredible. And they might not be like the best modelers. They might not be the best entitlement guy. They don't have every skill set, but they have the skill set of communicating what their value is or what they want to learn or whatever it is. But just like to your point, not being afraid to talk to people and then learning how to show value and communicate it in an effective manner. And
Yeah.
anyways, that's huge, and they don't teach that in school. But like, I know a handful of guys who are just incredible communicators, and they're not great at everything, but they're really good at that, and they do well. Okay, and
Right.
because people trust them, and people like having conversation with them. They know what to say right at the right time. I mean, it's a skill. It's an ever evolving skill. They don't teach that in school, I don't think. But I think
for
it's
sure.
important.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It sounds like honestly just getting your own education, the people business, right? And being bold. So like you said, seeking mentorship and, you know, well, cool. Well, speaking of the people business, can you tell us more about, I guess, your construction days, kind of managing people, projects, deadlines, timelines, and all that? I guess some of the challenges and maybe some of the things that you learned that are kind of helping you today, if there are anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 15 years worth at this point, so there's plenty.
How much time you
You
got?
know, yeah, exactly. No, there it could be anything from, in the construction world where you have material delays or issues that could impact the critical path of the project. And you've got to go figure that out. Is it getting the material faster or getting the piece of equipment faster? Is it finding a workaround, a temporary solution so that everything else can keep moving? Um, you know, is it on the development side, right? Is it infrastructure, power, water, sewer that's not to your site, yet, and it impacts the critical path of your development? How do you go solve those problems? I mean, there are a ton of examples. I think at the end of the day, we're all driving towards a schedule. Time is money. Time is a commitment, a reputation, actual dollars, and the issues that happen are inevitable. It's just how do you go solve? How do you go solve it? How do you keep things moving? That can really like make or break a project, a person, a career. you know.
So let me ask you this: like, let's dive into specifics in regards to like material delays. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
so your contractor reaches out to you and says, "Hey, we can't get X materials for another 3 weeks, and we plan on having it tomorrow. So and we can't start this part of the project until we have those materials. So now we're delayed 3 weeks. I mean, either
right.
use an example to explain this or give multiple examples, but like,
Yeah,
do you delay it 3 weeks? Do you find a different vendor or a different supplier who can supply it earlier, or are you referencing the budget to look at a different solution? I mean, I'm sure there's nuances, and that's not an easy question to answer, but like, how have you solved that problem?
yeah. Like let's take take a piece of HVAC equipment or like an electrical panel or something. I mean, back in the COVID days, right? I mean, we were having a lot of issues with electrical components. You could get like panel can so when the whole electrical like one line, right? I mean, you've got let's just call it like a main distribution panel, for example. You got a can, which is what all the guts sit in, and then you've got all the components or the guts, right? I mean, you could get cans pretty quickly to where you can hook up your conduit, you can get your infrastructure in your underground, the piping can get to a building, within the building. But at the end of the day, you can't flip the switch and you can't run equipment without all of the components, the breakers, the wires, and everything else, right? And so these things were getting delayed. And if you didn't order them quick enough, or there was an unforeseen, issue, you're just having to get creative on figuring it out, right? So it's like, well, do everything you can. Again, put the panel in, get the conduit run, like get everything ready, and then, does anyone have one in another warehouse? Is there an alternate manufacturer that might meet the performance spec, but didn't necessarily meet the, manufacturer and model spec that the engineer, put into the documents that we purchased? Is there a premium for that? Can we absorb a premium for that? Who's at fault? Who's going to pay for, the premium in material or the cost to expedite shipping? Or maybe we can't get it any faster, but maybe we can cut the installation duration from 2 weeks to 1 week let's go throw two crews at it. Let's go run 24, hours a day. And then, maybe we go figure out a labor premium.
Is this why all my construction friends have high blood pressure?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because I have it
But
just
like,
just listening to it.
but I mean, it's solving problems, at kind of the highest level, and it's something that like is probably insane, but I kind of thrive on it. Like it's extremely exciting for me, solving high risk, high implication problems. It's always been fun. You put everybody in a room and you go figure it out. So yeah, I mean, and again, that's just a small example, right? And then there's all the paperwork that goes behind that because there's a cost and like who's responsible, who's gonna actually pay for that. Did we paper the order correctly? Did we paper who's at fault? Did we give them the right amount of like notice per their contract agreement to where we could actually recover, any cost? I mean, there's just so much that also happens administratively kind of behind the scenes, even outside of the just like let's put our head down and like figure out the problem and how we keep things moving. Then it's kind of all the housekeeping stuff behind it that's a whole nother process. But yeah, I mean, again, that's just kind of a small example of things that happen
Yeah.
all the time.
Well, yeah, right. And that skill set, it sounds like it kind of could take you into entitlements well, because I mean, obviously this, surprises come up in the entitlements process, and you have to kind of move quickly, adapt to that. It might be that you think you're getting a land disturbance permit soon, but it pops up that you're still missing a traffic impact analysis or something like that. Um, so from your time working in entitlements, like what are some common curveballs that you get, and can you tell us what some others might be able to expect out of that, especially since the entitlement process is getting longer and longer, it's getting tougher to push
It
things
is.
through counties, and yeah, what I guess, what are the top challenges that you're seeing today?
Yeah, it's time frame, it's staffing on the review and municipality side, right? I mean, these folks are short staffed. Their processes are antiquated, and maybe some of them are getting updated. Maybe some of them got updated during your project, and all your permits got cleared out.
Yes.
And you're chasing that issue. So um, you always have to maintain a good relationship with these folks, whether it's your county planning and zoning staff or your city planning and zoning staff, your utility company designers and review staff. Maintain, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about just really being good on the people side of the business and the soft skill side of what we do. Picking up the phone instead of just sending constant emails, knowing how to manage different personalities. It'll help you get information. It'll help you keep things moving along. It'll help you be understanding when things happen because things happen. And then instead of like losing your shit, you have a nice conversation with somebody. And next thing you know, they're like, "Hey, we'll get it." I mean, I just had this conversation with the Department of Environmental Services. They lost a permit, I guess, a review package from CWS that had been sent, and we've been asking like, "Hey, where are we? Where are we? Where are we?" And then I just picked up the phone and I called DES, and the guy said like, "Yep, I see where this came in. It's been 3 weeks. We should have had it reviewed by now. Like, apologies." I was like, "Totally get it. I understand." He's like, "Look, I'll have it for you by the end of the day today, if not by noon tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh,
Cool. Yeah.
perfect." But I could have just kept asking via email. I could have just done nothing and just wondered when things were gonna like happen and get done. Um, Instead, you kind of just work the process, and think things happen. But yeah, pick up the phone, go figure it out, and then you can keep things things moving. So
Yeah. So it's like the art of following up. Do you run across people? Because I that's a lot of my job as well, is working through the entitlements process, following up, pushing things through the county, everything else through SEDES or DES in general. You mentioned maintaining relationships, you know, being being cordial, being friendly, and kind of figuring out the personalities that you're dealing with. How do how do you kind of figure out their personality? And have you been facing a lot of folks that, like, for whatever reason, just do not want to get on a phone call? Because that's big for me. It's like, I'll be like, hey, what times are you available? Send a bunch of times, and then they just like shoot you back an email with like one answer to one question, and then
right.
another.
Yeah, I mean it's a constant battle, and I'd say like if you're a decent read of people, you could figure out personality dynamics pretty quickly. And you have a little correspondence with someone, and you can determine pretty quickly, are they the good old boy that like only talks on the phone? Are they the whatever, the younger person who's like defers to texting and like will only text? Or
Yeah, yeah, I
is
gotcha.
this someone who's just constantly swamped or overworked, and like all they do is send the one word, like one sentence emails, and then you figure out how to
Right.
manage that, right? So, and like for the one, so for your example, Nick, like the email person, I have run into that before, and there is a municipality in the area, and I go there. I just show up. Hey, I was in the neighborhood. Like I was right next
Hmm.
door. Is now a good time?
Yeah.
But they didn't know I drove 30 minutes to get there,
Yeah.
just because like I couldn't sit there any longer to wait on an
Right.
email or get more detail that I couldn't extract from a one sentence email response, because it required a dialogue. And so, yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to get creative. It goes back to what we were talking about, like just do it, don't have shame in it, stay persistent.
Well, it's just not like it's not going to happen unless you do it.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
like it's
Won't.
it's kind of like what's the saying of you do things over and over again and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity. It's like, why do you think you're gonna get a different result? So
Right.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and then find out like small thing. And this is kind of like a cliche thing, but small find out small things about them, like were they in the military? So when Memorial Day rolls around, like make sure you shoot them a note, shoot them a text. Like we've got a landowner adjacent to a property we're under contract with, and we're like, this lady's my favorite example. We're over there constantly. It's family property. The whole thing is very sensitive. The first interaction was rough, to say the least. A ton of resistance. Didn't want us there. Like, we're wondering what we were doing. Like, couldn't get us out of the way, quick enough. Um, but you have a conversation with them. You try and just be polite and personable, and then next thing you know, she sees a picture of my kid in the background on my phone. We start talking about kids, and then the next time I tell her, hey, look, sorry, this feels intrusive. I will text you every time someone comes out here moving forward, so that and that you have a heads up, and that you don't feel like strange vehicles and people are just like showing up next to your property and in your at your house. And that stuff goes a long way. The next time I like, dude, I was at a meeting. I stopped by the store. I grabbed a orchid and like left it on her front porch, and got like this long text message the next time, about how it was her favorite flower, and she was so appreciative. And you know, small things like that really go a long way. Now we go out on site, we have cordial conversations, we can move through kind of our process without the like NIMBY resistance from
Sure.
the neighbor in the neighborhood, because you've kind of established a relationship at that point. So people kind of take
Right.
that stuff for granted, but it goes way further than you think.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think that especially most people outside of the industry, they might view developers as like these kind of big bull, bull in the china shop, just move through, I do what I want, I'll push people out of the way. But you really can't do that and you're not really successful doing that. I mean, maybe in New York City or something, I don't know, but like especially in the southeast, in various markets in the southeast, a lot of them you still have the old culture kind of way where you have to be friendly, deal with people the right way, and kind of like you said, the biggest emphasis should be on learning the people business. And I think that is something that everyone can kind of take away and be successful with.
Well, people
So
want to
Yeah.
do deals with people they like. I mean, that's just,
for
and
sure,
that's, and
Right.
you call it cliche, but it's, I mean, it's so true, and it gets proven to be truer and truer every time we kind of experience a situation that involves that. It's, people just
Yep.
they want to trust the people they do business with, and they want to have a good, fun, genuine conversation with them.
Right. Yeah, I mean the issues will always be there, right? I mean you're always going to have the hurdles and the challenges. It's kind of how you manage the issue specifically and how you manage the people and the conversations involved, and that's the difference maker, even like we got a comment from a utility company that was unreasonable. We were doing a small main extension, and then they wanted us to run another like 400 feet, and we were basically
on
in
that half acre
like
parcel.
yeah, and so we were
Holy smokes!
basically putting in their own infrastructure. But since we had, again, I kind of credit it to the relationship and just kind of picking up the phone and saying like, hey, we had an understanding and we thought we were moving forward based on previous direction and comments, and feel like this might be a little outside of the scope of what we're doing here.
No
And
doubt.
do you think we could have a conversation about this? And then we did, and they dropped it, and we moved on. But we could have either said sure and rolled over on it, and it would have been a massive impact to the project, or we could have said no, this is what we want to do, that's not fair, and kind of beat our hand on the desk. And I don't know where that would have gotten us, but I gotta imagine it wouldn't have been anywhere positive.
But you still badly
um
want to. That's the tough part, is being
Right.
able to like
you do. Oh no.
overcome.
Oh, that, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, being able to overcome that frustration. And I mean, my partner and I are getting better and better at, like, if we get an email or like that, same situation, we, in unforeseen circumstances, just unreasonable, we won't respond until like the next day. We like
Yeah.
let our
Yeah.
emotions kind of.
Yeah,
Right.
you guys kind of hash it out. You do a little role play in the office, and then you kind of leave it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, because it's huge, though. I mean, it's about how you handle the situation and how you communicate it. And if you go based off your gut reaction when you're heated, it most likely will not go your way. So,
Yeah,
Yep.
and I get this. This is, I mean, it's funny because we started talking about municipalities, but I this is obviously with everyone, with every service provider that you deal with, everyone from your engineers, architect to broker. I assume, you know, they might have things differently or see things differently, and kind of you got to work with them and create the best outcome. Um,
Right.
so cool. All right, so I guess I mean the most important takeaway I got here is just figure out the people business, learn how to deal with people, learn how to manage people.
I think so. I mean, I think that's been a big thing I've focused on, and I think just yeah, being able to have conversations with folks and be pleasant to work with. I mean, I don't know, probably not the like nicest guy, but there are certainly worse people to work with out there. um and I mean, I think it's helped a lot. And again, you can just you kind of figure out the rest. So just
For sure.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all want to wrap it up? I think we had a good conversation today. Um, Learned a lot, so
Yeah,
we're good.
Drew.
No, yeah, I love it, man. I appreciate you guys having me and for the interest and kind of my background and what we're doing here. And um, yeah, Nick, we need to grab a beverage and I'd love to
For
hear
sure.
more about what you guys are doing. And
For sure.
Kevin and I stay in touch somewhat regularly, so it's super fun to follow these guys and kind of their growth and successes. So
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
let's do that soon. Let's do that soon. Yeah, again, appreciate you jumping on. Thanks for sharing, and would love to have you on in the future as your business grows. You learn more. You have more stories for us. We'll get you back in here in the war
100%.
room.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Hear
want to
hear
come.
your stories.
I want to come tour one of your projects, Drew.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
that too.
anytime. I mean, we're wide open on that, that first deal right now, and so yeah, I would be happy to walk you guys through, through anything, or yeah,
Cool.
come out and check it out.
Cool, man. Thanks.
So yeah, all right. Well, that's about all we have for today. So, wanted to say thanks again, Drew, for jumping on. Kevin, thank you so much, and thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Building Your World podcast.